It is now my honor to present to you David Brooks.
Thank you. First, congratulations, Marquette University class of 2019. You've made it to graduation day. This is really happening. You know this is real because you are hungover, your parents are proud, and your professors are shocked. I have to say it's very cool for me to be here with you. It's cool to be in the building where the Milwaukee Bucks play. I feel their aura here. I feel surrounded by men who are bigger, stronger, and much greater than myself. And now I know how the Toronto Raptors feel. Since you got into Marquette, you've mastered new skills. You've learned how to dominate classroom discussion while doing none of the reading. In lecture halls, you've mastered another skill. Right now, it looks like you're staring at me with rapt attention, but in fact, you're completely asleep. Over the past 4 years at Marquette, you've worked hard, made dozens of friends, and done your laundry at least 6 times. I salute your community service. You spent one spring break unicycling across Thailand while reading to lepers. I salute your cultural sophistication. You tell your friends you like Kendrick Lamar, but secretly you like Taylor Swift before she got angry. Now, on this big day, your life takes an exciting turn. There are 2 paths ahead of you. One leads to a soul-crushing job as a cog in a corporate machine. The other leads to permanent residence on your parents' basement. I'm here to help you navigate these exciting opportunities. I'm here to remind you shouldn't spend time worrying about the financial stuff. Your parents will be happy to pay your rent for another 10 or 20 years. I also remind you that you're in a beautiful spot in your lives, more mature than the freshmen, sexier than the faculty, a lot sexier than the Marquette faculty, as a matter of fact. You may not have been to other college commencements before, so you may not know the etiquette. After you get your degree, it's customary to give President Lovell a little tip, 10 or 20 bucks, just to show him he did a good job. It's also customary to give your commencement speaker a little tip, $600 or $700, $5,000 for econ majors. Now, this may be your first college commencement, but you probably know these addresses have a certain formula. The college asks a person who has achieved a certain level of career success to give you a speech telling you that career success is not important. Then we're supposed to give you a few minutes of completely garbage advice. Listen to your inner voice, be true to yourself, follow your passion, your future is limitless, take risks. First, my generation gives you a mountain of debt. Then we give you career derailing guidelines that will prevent you from ever paying it off. So much generational hostility here. I'm here to tell you the truth. Don't follow your passion. Follow the passion of the person sitting next to you. It's probably better. I especially like all the commencement speeches that telling you how important it is to fail. These started a few years ago with Steve Jobs and J.K. Rowling. And from these addresses, we learned that failure is great if you happen to be Steve Jobs or J.K. Rowling. For most people, failure stinks. Don't fail. That's my advice. Now, commencement speeches are the way our culture hands down its values. And so I read a lot of these things, and what strikes me about most of them is that they're big boxes of nothing. You're at the point in your lives when you're asking the big questions. What do I want from my life? What is the highest and most valuable kind of life? And we hand you this empty box of freedom. Be free. Your future is limitless. Take risks. Dream big. You're trying to decide, should I pursue this life or that life? And these cliches don't help you at all. They don't tell you what kind of life is the life most worth wanting. Then we hand you the big empty box of self. Look inside yourself. You do you. Live according to your own true way. You're amazing all by yourself. These cliches don't help either. The you is the thing that you have to form. Plus, you're not trying to devote yourself to yourself. You're trying to find some cause that will give you meaning outside yourself. You're looking for a cause which you'd be willing to live and die for. All we do is give you empty boxes, which reveals something about our culture. We're filled with advice for how to become a CEO or a doctor or an engineer, but on the most important questions of life, large parts of American society have nothing to say. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to try to describe the kind of life I think is best. At least it'll be something. I haven't lived up to my ideal. I fail my ideals all the time, but I do believe in these ideals. And the word I'd like to build my speech around is the word commitment. Over the next 15 years, most of you will make 4 big commitments: to a spouse and family, to a vocation, to a community, and to a philosophy or faith. The fulfillment of your entire lives will be determined by how wisely you choose your commitment and how well you execute upon them. What is a commitment? A commitment is a promise made out of love. First, you fall in love with something, maybe a field of research, maybe a town, a political cause, a woman, your God, your future children. And after falling in love with this thing, you want to make promises to it. A commitment is a promise made without expecting a return. You may get benefits from your love for your spouse or your child, but that's not why you made the commitment. If you're lucky, you'll make the kind of commitment that Ruth made to Naomi in the Bible. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. That's a total commitment. Your commitments will give you your identity. In 20 years, you'll introduce yourself by according to your greatest commitment. I'm a Marine. I'm a Catholic. I'm a teacher. I'm a mom. I'm a dad. When you start serving your commitment, it gets inside you and changes who you are. I knew a woman who grew up in a small town called Wilkesboro, North Carolina. She couldn't wait to get out of there. For college, she went away to the West Coast, but something drew her back to home, as things tend to draw us back to home. Now she spends her life creating meeting places for lonely people in Wilkesboro. I belong to Wilkesboro, she says. This town owns me. She serves her town. For her, the big decisions in life are easy. She knows what she is committed to. She knows where her ultimate allegiance lies. She knows what to do. She's reached the point of the double negative. I can't not do this. This is who I am. Your commitment also builds your character. When my oldest son was born, he came out bruised and blue with a super low APGAR score. They rushed him off to the intensive care ward, and that night we didn't know what was going to happen. A question passed through my head. If he only lives for 30 minutes, would that be worth a lifetime of grief for his mother and I? Before having a child, I would have said no. How could 30 minutes of life, not even aware of itself, be worth a lifetime of grief for 2 other people? But after our kids are born, we parents, those up in the stands, become aware of a layer of love and commitment that we never could have imagined beforehand. It happened to them roughly 21 years ago. And after that, you realize the life of your child, even for the 30 minutes, has infinite value and dignity, so of course it's worth it. When you discover this level of commitment, you want to do things for your baby. You want to wake up early for a baby. You'd rather play tennis, but you care for your baby. You become slightly less selfish and self-absorbed than you were, and slowly your disposition becomes a little more giving, your character a little finer. Our character is formed by the things we love, the things we promise to serve, as we try to live up to the promises we make to those things. Now, making these 4 commitments is central to the next decade and a half of your life. It may even be a good idea to keep 4 separate journals, each one dedicated to how you're doing on one of the 4 big commitments, to a family, a vocation, a creed, and a community. Don't let these questions drift. The people I know who are unhappiest just let their life drift from one day to the other. Now, how do you choose your commitments? How do you choose what work to go into, who to marry, where to live? Over the centuries, wise people have left us some tips. For example, when choosing a career, be led above all by 2 things: your sense of beauty and the presence of rage. Choosing a career is weirdly aesthetic. When the scientist E.O. Wilson was 7, he took his first trip to the beach. He saw creatures outside his previous imagination, like jellyfish. One day he was sitting on a dock with his feet in the water when a stingray glided beneath him. He was thunderstruck. He calculated that children see animals at twice the size as adults. And at that moment, a naturalist was born. He loved the ocean, and he loved animals. It was that sheer sense of beauty. He has spent the next 80-odd years studying nature. Beauty calls to us in this way. When my daughter was 5, she walked into a hockey rink, and to this day, she teaches hockey to young adults in California. When I was 7, I read a book called Paddington the Bear and decided I want to become a writer. And I've written pretty much every day in the 50 years since, except for maybe 200. Einstein was given a compass when he was 5. He was amazed at the invisible forces controlling the needle, and he spent the rest of his life investigating the hidden forces of the universe. A painter was once asked why she became a painter. She replied, "I love the smell of paint." It's just that natural beauty. One bit of advice from Nietzsche is write down the 4 most beautiful moments in your life, then see if you can draw a thematic line through them. If you can do that, you'll have found the law of your very nature. Other people find their vocation in a fit of rage. Just over 100 years ago, Frances Perkins was in New York City having tea when she heard a commotion. She ran outside and saw a building on fire. She had stumbled upon one of the worst fires in American history, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. She watched over 100 seamstresses burn to their deaths. 57 of them left from the 11th floor building to die quickly on the pavement rather than to burn to death. It was her moment of obligation. She spent the next 60 years of her life fighting for worker rights. People don't generally find their vocation by asking, what do I want from life? They find it by asking, what is life asking of me? What problems are around me? What problems am I uniquely in a position to address? What injustices make me so angry that it can fuel me through life? Now, choosing who to marry would seem to be a more romantic choice than choosing a career, but it's actually less. Now, I know most of you are not thinking about marriage yet. One of my students told me marriage is a box that'll come in the mail when I'm 35. Don't need to think about it right now. But this is the most important decision in your life, and you should start thinking about it. I always tell college presidents that every course in the college should be about how to choose a marriage partner. The sociology of marriage, the psychology of marriage, the neuroscience of marriage. Nobody listens to me. When choosing to marry a person, the first thing to evaluate is the quality of your communications. Marriage is a decades-long conversation. You have to be able to talk to each other for the rest of your lives. When choosing who to marry, it's best to apply 3 lenses. First, the psychological lens. What personality traits does your potential spouse have? The research is clear on who to get into a relationship with. Go with kindness, avoid neuroticism. Kindness doesn't seem very sexy or an exciting trait, but kind people make the best relationship partners. Neurotic people seem really exciting, but the drama and the self-sabotage will never end. Then there's the emotional lens. There has to be a lot of passion between you to fuse you together so you can withstand the difficulties that any relationship involves. You should be thinking about him all the time. You should see her face in every crowd. You should feel a burning pain in your stomach when you go away from him. There has to be a lot of love, but there also has to be the right kind of love. The Greeks distinguished between 3 kinds: philia, which is friendship, eros, which is desire, and agape, which is selfless love. If all you have is philia, then you have a friendship, but not a real relationship. If all you have is eros and philia, then you've got a romantic fling, but not a marriage. You have to have all 3. Finally, there's the moral lens. Love will fade, love will have its ups and downs, but admiration won't fade. Do you admire this person? Does she keep her promises? Does he use good judgment? Does she refuse to cut moral corners? A relationship can survive many things. It cannot survive disrespect. After you've made a commitment, how do you execute it well? Again, the wise persons down the centuries have left us clues. The first is make your commitments maximal commitments. Every commitment, like going to med school or joining the military, has a testing period, a boot camp. The only way to get through it is with an attitude of total abandonment. Go all in and burn all the bridges behind you. This is even true with marriage. Before you're married or living with someone, you can live with the illusion that you're easy to live with. Afterwards, you realize you're not. You're being watched, and you begin watching yourselves. As my friend Tim Keller notes, if you were 2 years into a relationship, suddenly you discover that the person you thought was so completely perfect is actually kind of selfish. And as you are making this discovery about her, she is making it about you. You have a choice. You can have half a marriage and never deal with the selfish parts of your marriage, or you can throw yourself at each other with blind abandon. You can each decide to see your own selfishness as the key problem here. Your own selfishness is the only selfishness you can really control. If two people spend their days trying to deal with their own selfishness, you have the making of a good relationship. But good intentions are not enough. You have to know the life hacks. For example, couples are often told never to go to bed mad. But if you're fighting with your partner, sometimes you just need to go to bed. Wake up, make waffles, you'll feel better in the morning. Somewhere online I read that you should boast about your friends and your partners and have them overhear you boasting. If in marriage you feel the urge to bitch about your spouse, bitch to his mother and not yours. His mother will forgive him, yours never will. And this is the crucial point. A commitment is driven by love, but it has to be executed with skill. My favorite definition of a commitment is falling in love with something and then building a structure around it for those moments when love falters. Jews love their God, but they keep kosher just in case. Religions are filled with rituals, spiritual disciplines, because people need structures to serve as daily guides to keep them on their commitments. Now, I'm a writer, so I'm fascinated by the way writers structure their commitment to their vocation. Maya Angelou would wake up at 5:30 every morning. At 6:30, she would go off to a modest hotel room she kept. Inside the room, there were 4 things: a bed, a desk, a dictionary, a deck of cards, a Bible, and a bottle of sherry. She would arrive at 7 and leave at 12:30 sharp. The short story master John Cheever would get up, put on his only suit, ride the elevator to the basement of his building where he had an office. He would then take off the suit, ride in his boxers till 12:30, and then put back on the suit and ride the elevators upstairs to make himself lunch. Ritual and routine. I've tried to use this commencement address to make a subtle critique of our culture. Our culture puts a lot of emphasis on individual freedom, but too much individual freedom tears at the bonds between people. Too much individual freedom makes us lonely and unattached. Too much freedom leads to a scattered, afraid to commit life. I've used this talk to ask you to reject the individualism of our culture and embrace a life built around commitment and attachment. Make big promises. Execute them in small ways. You'll be more joyous. One of the great things about Marquette University is that it hosts the papers of one of my great heroes, a woman named Dorothy Day. When Dorothy Day was a young woman, she realized all the accounts of childbirth she'd ever read were written by guys. So she decided to write one. And she wrote one 40 minutes after the birth of her daughter, at the beginning of a great commitment. If I'd written the greatest book, composed the greatest symphony, or carved the most exquisite figure, she wrote, I could not have felt the more exalted creator than I did when they placed my child in my arms. No human creature could receive or contain so vast a flood of love and joy as I felt after the birth of my child. With this came a need to worship and to adore. A commitment seized her, a commitment to her child, but also a commitment to God. She became a Catholic, and on that day, spent the next 60 years of her life not only serving the poor, but living in poverty with the pure. It was a complete and ferocious commitment. At the end of her life, she was asked by a guy named Robert Coles if she would write her memoir. And she said, I once tried. I sat down with a piece of paper, and I wrote on top, a life remembered. And then I sat there, and I thought of the Lord and his visit to us those many centuries ago, and I was just grateful to have had him on my mind all that time. She had reached a place after 60 years of commitment of total serenity and complete peace and joy. Marquette class of 2019, congratulations. I just ask that you tie yourself down to something you love. The chains you choose will set you free. Thank you.